People are hurting, and they're scared. The rent is due. The utility companies are calling. When we get sick, the insurance companies won't help us. We're doing our best to help each other, but if something doesn't change, we are going under.
I was laid off 3 weeks ago. In a week of panic because of the growing COVID-19 pandemic, I can't say that I was surprised, but it still hit me hard. Whatever initial sadness and shame I felt is gone. Now I'm just furious. My husband Derek is out of work as well. By no fault of our own, we are being pushed to the brink. I couldn't pay my rent on April 1st. I won't be able to pay May 1st. No one should be expected to make any payments during this time. No payments, no late fees, no debt.
Trump's government gave money to the banks. They gave it to big business. They're talking about giving it to the insurance companies. We got a one-time check that doesn't pay the bills, and that's not enough. We need a people's bailout, and we need it now. That means healthcare for everyone, no exceptions, and protective gear for frontline workers. It means direct cash assistance to every person until this crisis is over. It means stopping evictions and suspending rent and mortgage payments. And it means getting systems in place to end this crisis and prevent the next. The only way to get through this is together. We're all doing so much to take care of each other, but we deserve a government that cares too. Tell Congress we need a people's bailout now.
Welcome, everyone. I'm Sean Sebastian, and we are People's Action, a national network of grassroots groups with more than 1 million members in 38 states. And this is Money to the People, a special webinar on the economy during COVID-19 with special guest economist Stephanie Kelton and Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib. Thanks so much for joining us. If you want to follow us in Spanish, dial the number on your screen. Para español, marque este número. 75,000 Americans have died so far from COVID, and thousands more are dying every day. That's more than any country in the world, and scientists say that most of these lives would have been saved if Trump had just acted 2 weeks earlier. More Americans have now died because of Trump's incompetence than died in the Vietnam War. And 33 million of us are out of work. That's 1 in 5 Americans. All of us have been touched by this crisis, and we know what we need. We need a people's bailout. We need free universal testing and treatment. And we need economic support so we can stay home and stay safe. And no matter what the right wing tells you, we can do it. Joining us to talk about this are our special guests, economist Stephanie Kelton, Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib, and People's Action's own Kanyala Ng. We'll start with Professor Stephanie Kelton, who may be the most important economist of this moment of crisis. She has been Bernie Sanders' economic advisor, chief economist for the U.S. Senate Budget Committee, and is the author of the forthcoming book, The Deficit Myth, available on June 9th. Professor Kelton, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
So, Professor Kelton, my first question is about the stimulus. Just a few weeks ago, Congress passed the $2 trillion CARES Act. It was the biggest spending bill we've ever passed, and it's not nearly enough. Can we actually afford to spend more for the things we need?
Not only can we afford to spend more, but we can't afford to stop now. And that's really, really important. I know these are very big numbers, and I know that for a lot of people, it seems almost impossible to imagine Congress mustering trillions of dollars in a short period of time, right? In a matter of weeks, we had 4 major pieces of legislation passed. And hopefully there's more to come because, as you've said, we aren't finished yet. There's that needs. So the answer to the question is yes. Congress has what we call the power of the purse. And that's what gives Congress the fiscal capacity to commit enormous sums of money to tackling what is clearly an unprecedented economic and health meltdown.
So just to be more specific, we just saw that People's Bailout video, right? And we're going to be talking to Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib later in this webinar, and she's proposing going far beyond the one-time $1,200 check. What Congresswoman Tlaib is proposing is a $2,000 check every single month for as long as this crisis lasts, and stay in our homes, put food on the table. And is that possible?
Yes. I mean, whatever Congress does in terms of legislation, if it passes and it gets a signature from the president, then it will happen. So the possible is actually quite easy. It is a matter of finding the votes. It is a matter of getting enough members of Congress to come together to unify around a piece of legislation and to authorize the expenditures. And that's really the trick. Once Congress authorizes the spending will take place.
So this goes against a lot of what we've heard from both sides, where, both sides talk about the U.S. government like a household. You can only spend what you take in taxes. And even now, as people are as thousands of people are dying without care, as almost every family in America is losing income, we see people like Mitch McConnell saying that he's all of a sudden worried about the deficit. Are you saying that those concerns and that reason, that barrier to getting what we need is completely fake?
Yeah, I am. What I'm saying is, look, I'm going to put this as simply as I possibly can. And I don't know if Tim knows that we can hear him, but we can hear him. So I'm going to try to put this as simply as I possibly can. When Congress wants to spend, it writes a bill, okay? And that legislation sends instructions to the government's bank, the Federal Reserve. And so that $2.2 trillion CARES Act sent a set of instructions to the Fed. And the instructions said to the Federal Reserve, we, the United States government, are ordering up $2.2 trillion. Okay, that's what Congress does. With legislation, it is ordering up the dollars that it wishes to spend. And once the dollars are ordered up, the Fed fills the order by using a computer keyboard at the Federal Reserve to carry out the payments, to change the numbers in the appropriate bank accounts, to mark up the size of the account. So you mentioned Representative Tlaib's proposal, which is to continue making payments to people until the crisis is over. The way that you achieve that is the Federal Reserve credits the bank accounts of the people in the amount that has been authorized by Congress, and those payments get made. And the reason that the federal government can do this is because it knows that it has its own central bank whose job it is to carry out the payments that have been authorized by Congress. So it's going to fill every order by marking up the size of the accounts, creating the dollars that Congress has authorized to be spent. It's really no more difficult than that.
Okay, Stephanie, so I'm trying to wrap my mind around this because there has to be a downside. What you're saying is we can give money to everyone, we can get a Green New Deal, we can get healthcare to everyone, that we can afford it. But is there a limit to how much the government can spend, and what's the real downside, not the right-wing downside?
Right. You're asking exactly the right question. Look, a very famous and important economist, British economist by the name of John Maynard Keynes, said a very long time ago, anything we have the capacity to do, anything we are able to do, we can afford to do. So what we want to do is set aside the how will we pay for it, where will the money come from, can we afford it question. That's not the right question. It turns out that's actually the easy part. The challenge is doing all of the kinds of things that we want to do to build a better society, to build an economy that works for everyone, to build a more resilient social safety net and so forth. To do those things, what we need are real resources. We need, if we want to build resilient infrastructure to address climate change, for example, we need construction workers, architects, engineers. We need heavy machines and equipment to rebuild and repair clean, safe modes of transportation, housing, and so forth. We need steel. We need concrete. We need real resources. And so the constraint on the federal government's spending, which is your question, is our nation's productive capacity. It's our supply side of the economy. Do we have the people? Do we have the factories and the machines? Do we have the real resources that we need to do a Green New Deal, to provide Medicare for all, to reinvest in R&D and education and all of those things? Can we train teachers and doctors and build hospitals and community health centers all across America? And so the constraint is there. There is a limit to what you can do. All the money in the world won't get you the PPE and the ventilators that you need if they haven't been manufactured and produced. So the limits are on the supply side. They're the real resources. And is it possible for the government to spend too much? Yes. Can deficits get too big? Yes. But the evidence that the government is overspending is inflation. The punishment for overspending is inflation. It's not bankruptcy of the federal government. It's not insolvency. You don't blow yourself up like a household or a private business in terms of going broke. The punishment for overspending is inflationary pressure mounting.
Okay, that makes sense to me, Stephanie. But what doesn't make sense is there are so many people suffering. There's literally thousands of people dying every day. In other countries like South Korea contained the virus. In Denmark and other European countries, they just paid people 80 to 90% of their salary. So, South Korea doesn't have a public health crisis right now. Denmark doesn't have an unemployment crisis right now. You're saying that we could have done that?
Not only could we have done it, it's tragic that we didn't do that. It's exactly what we should have done. What we did was we redefined the job description for the vast majority of people in this country, right? We said certain people are essential workers. They have to leave the home. They have to stay in the workplace. But everyone who is able to do so, we asked them, please help us save lives. Help us flatten the curve. Help us prevent the healthcare system from becoming overwhelmed. And we redefined your job description to be stay at home and help us save lives. That is your new job, right? And we're all in this together. And in exchange for performing that new job, we want to keep you whole. We don't want you to lose your income, lose your home, be forced to miss payments on your car payment and your student loan, right? We want to hold you harmless in this because you're doing what you've been asked to do by your government. And yes, that's what we should have done. We wanted people to stay connected to their employers, on payroll, out of the workplace, but to have the income that they need to buy food and pay recurring expenses, because those two things don't go away in a pandemic or any other time. You got to eat and you have recurring bills. You have utilities. You have a car payment, a credit card payment. You got to pay your rent. You have a mortgage. You know what these are. You got a phone and cable, and those bills don't go away. So you're absolutely right. There are countries that did a much better job at this, providing the income backstop, payroll backstop to keep workers connected to their employers, keep their incomes supported so that they can avoid the worst effects in terms of bankruptcies and the breaking up of homes, losing apartments and that sort of thing. So that's what we should have done.
So, Stephanie, given where we are right now, and the kind of catastrophic situation that we're in right now, we at People's Action and a lot of our allies are demanding really big things. We're demanding a people's bailout. And, given what you've just said, like, what should the limits of our vision be when it comes to public housing, when it comes to money to the people, when it comes to all of the things that we need? There is a limit, but how far out is that limit? How big should our imaginations be when we're demanding the things that we need?
Well, look, I think that if there is a silver lining, God knows, in all of this that's happening, it is that everything is falling apart. Everything is falling apart. And the more it falls apart, the more the pieces are scattered around, the more there is an opportunity to pick them up and put them together in new and different ways. We don't have to rebuild everything the way it was. We have an opportunity to put the pieces together and build differently. And so what kind of a world do we want to live in? What do we want to rebuild? What do we want our communities to look like? What do we want our manufacturing sector? What are the jobs that we're going to create in the future? So should we think bold and big and ambitious and transformative and never again find ourselves in a situation where there is so much vulnerability? Right? This is what this pandemic has revealed, just how strained our social safety net, just how bad the vulnerabilities are with respect to our healthcare system, the way we provide healthcare, our supply chain. So think big, think bold. The limits are, again, in our capacity to mobilize our real resources and use them in ways that best lift up the majority of people in this country.
Thank you so much for joining us, Professor Kelton. That was incredible. And thank you so much for encouraging us to dream big and dream bold. I want to say again that you can get Professor Kelton's new book, The Deficit Myth, on June 9th. And I think a lot of us will be wanting to read it. Thank you so much, Professor Kelton. And now, after that amazing conversation, we know what's possible and we know the scale of the suffering that we're facing. And our next guest is actually stepping up into this moment and trying to deliver what people need. Michigan Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib has helped introduce the Automatic Boost to Communities Act, also known as the ABC Act, which authorizes direct recurring payments every month for as long as the COVID crisis lasts. Not one check, but a check every single month so that we can provide for our families. Joining us to interview Representative Tlaib is Commissioner Myers, a member of People's Action affiliate Michigan United, who represents the city of River Rouge in Michigan. Thanks so much for joining us, Commissioner Myers and Representative Tlaib.
I would like to say good afternoon, everybody. I'm Commissioner Myers. I'm commissioner for the city of River Rouge. I'm also an environmental justice organizer for Michigan United, affiliated with People's Action. Also, I'm a volunteer for feedthestreetstour.org. And today we have the pleasure of speaking with Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib. Shout out to Rashida Tlaib. She's doing great work in our community and throughout the country. So just everybody make some noise for her. She's got to give a hand clap to her, you know what I'm saying, for all the great work she's been doing. You know what I'm saying, keep up the great work. And first of all, I just wanted to say, through everything that's going on, how are you holding up and how is the family?
I mean, we're holding up. I think it's been, I come from a large family. I'm the eldest of 14. And so we lost my dad a couple of years ago. So we're trying to really make sure my mother's taken care of. We actually have not let her leave the house since this pandemic has gotten very, very serious. She has a lot of pre-existing conditions. So it's been really hard to be away from her. But we've been cooking over FaceTime. I've been checking on my brothers and sisters. All of them have been impacted by this via unemployment, via, some of the broken healthcare system. So many of them needed to get testing. They were getting denied testing. There's just so much going on that I think there isn't anybody anywhere in the country that hasn't been directly impacted by this pandemic.
Even with you dealing with, all of the things that you're dealing with your family, you're still trying to help out the people in the community. What do you feel has been the most difficult part of that, just trying to balance it all?
Commissioner, one of the things that's been difficult is almost like our office is turned into like an ER room. I mean, we're not medical experts, but we're the ones getting the call saying, hey, I went to work and they're not giving us masks. They're not even giving us sanitizer. And many of my neighbors a couple months ago were considered unskilled workers, and now they're essential workers. They're essential workers without the essential, backup of hazard pay, of protections in the workplace, mediocre of no health care coverage. And so, I mean, these are the same neighbors that have been fighting for $15 minimum wage increase prior to this pandemic for almost a decade. And now all of a sudden they're essential workers, and they're the ones making sure that there's food on people's table, that, a lot of goods that we need are reaching our families, hospitals are getting cleaned, all of those things that, again, many of these workers have been asking for, some human dignity and respect prior to this pandemic. So I just hope people don't forget who had to step up and who had to sacrifice their life, their public health, show up to work so that we can be safer. So it's been hard in that sense, because we're getting these calls left and right of, I got to get my unemployment. I don't know what's going on. I can't pay rent. And I don't know if you know this, Commissioner. I mean, we know here locally, but nationally, a third of folks couldn't pay their rent in April. I don't know what it is in May, but I know 30 million people apply for unemployment benefits. 25% of folks that own their own home, homeowners, had to apply for mortgage forbearance. All this to say, of course, we welcome moratoriums here in Michigan, as you know, Commissioner, that helped with, from the water shut-off moratorium to rent moratorium. A lot of these moratoriums are wonderful, but when this pandemic is gone, and hopefully it will be, but it's going to be a while, those bills are still going to be coming in. And so for much of my staff and I, we're constantly looking to how can we make sure that we're getting people through this crisis, making sure they have what they need, they have the resources. And it's an everyday thing, from senior citizen calling and saying, Rashida, I need groceries, working with Focus Hope and Gleaners and making sure we can get food delivered to people's homes. We had one of our nonprofits in Inkster call us and say, hey, we're having a big cry out from our moms out here that need and formula. So we had to raise money for that. So, in many ways, a lot of the broken systems that we had in place before, it just gotten heightened, very much exposed. And now, my team of this amazing team that I have, I have some great social workers on staff, caseworkers, policy advocates that are really social justice organizers that have been really trying to show people like the sense of urgency that is out here, that we need to move quickly.
Michigan has had a high rate of numbers from dealing with the pandemic and situations like that. So what are you seeing about the scale of the economic crisis that we're facing within this pandemic?
Yeah, the economic divide is real. I'm not joking when I tell people, like, look, majority of Americans were living check by check before this pandemic. And, you have 30 million people applying for unemployment benefits, many of which, again, still have bills that are coming in. No matter how many moratoriums you put in there, those are bills that are going to still be due later on. And so one of the key things we've been really working on is how do we make sure that every single policy from all the CARES packages coming in is directly helping people first. And so we introduced the Automatic Boost to Communities Act. It's called the ABC Act. A lot of people call it mint the coin because we pay for it, by minting 2 coins, getting $2 trillion to do reoccurring payments on a debit card that everybody would get, including our homeless neighbors. My sister who counsels survivors of domestic violence, she was telling me how some of this direct economic stimulus is not getting to those vulnerable women. And so these debit cards would be working with nonprofits, getting them out to people and mailing it to people. And it would be recharged $2,000 every single month until this pandemic is over. So none of this one-time stuff. Again, it has to be aggressive and it has to be sustainable. And then not only that, Commissioner, when this is all over, we want to be able to extend that to a year after the pandemic for everybody to get $1,000 sent to, recharged onto these debit cards. I think it's really critically important to realize, mailing these checks is just not working. It's not fast enough. I just yesterday had a telephone this virtual town hall. One of the residents said, I don't know what to do. I need food assistance now. I need all this. And one of the key things she said is, I qualified for the stimulus money, but I didn't have direct deposit. So I'm waiting still. And I heard it can be up to 10 weeks before people get their checks in the mail. And, that's the fact out there, is that 25% of folks are underbanked or unbanked. And so we need to come up with a better system. And, we have food assistance now on the bridge card. It works for people. We went from food stamps to that. And that has been really great because you get rid of going to have to pick it up and everything. People can get it recharged right away. So we need to meet, we need to take a similar approach of that urgency and moving quickly on this.
How people out there that's watching take action to help you make the ABC Act and recurring payments more of a reality?
One call of action for people is to demand that their members of Congress and their U.S. senators are supporting investment in people through a reoccurring payment, direct cash payment to individuals. They do it for big banks. They do it for corporations left and right. They need to make sure the priority goes to individuals. When you don't bail them out, you're leaving them behind. You're going to end up actually hurting people more. I mean, we want to save lives and we want to prevent the spread of this, deadly virus. The way we do it is making sure that people have the resources they need. They can stay home and be able to take care of their families. But when we're not investing in the people first, we're actually jeopardizing their lives every single day when we don't. So call and really educate your members of Congress and others the importance of centering everything we do on people first. And that means recurring payments and going beyond this one-time Band-Aid stuff.
Call your congressperson and tell them to support the ABC Act and automatic payments to the people. Call your congressperson and tell them to support the ABC Act and automatic payments to the people.
There was polling done, and I'm not a big I don't always believe polling is as accurate. Polling said that Trump was going to win the presidency and he won. So let's just put that in perspective. However, one of the biggest things I've seen is both Republicans, Democrats, all political spectrum have said, no, we need direct payments to individuals. So we know there's massive support out there among our neighbors across the country of all makeup backgrounds that are saying we need to invest in people first. So I need you all to keep raising your voices and saying no more corporate bailouts. Stop talking about these Band-Aid approaches. Let's talk about sustainable impact on people and giving them money. What I love about giving money to my neighbors, these direct payments, small businesses in Detroit, I had a big meeting with them, a call with them. And one of the things I loved is they're like, look, these small business loans, some of us will never get access to it. Some of us can't afford it because they're loans. And that's the thing that people can't afford. But man, can you please get the reoccurring payments legislation through? Because when you give money to folks out here, they spend it in their local establishments and their small businesses.
Thank you again. And once again, I'm Commissioner Myers, Commissioner for the City of River Rouge, Environmental Justice Organizer for Michigan United, affiliated with People's Action. I'm also a volunteer for feedthestreetstour.org. And we want to thank the great Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib, representing Detroit, representing the country, to be honest with you, man, just putting on, for everybody that's trying to do something good.
Wayne County. I love my Wayne County residents all throughout.
For sure. So thank you guys again for coming on to the call, and we look forward to hearing more from the ABC Act. And shout out to Rashida Tlaib. Make it noise.
Thank you, Commissioner. Shout out to you as well. Thank you so much for your advocacy on the ground.
Yeah, no problem. Anytime.
And Commissioner Myers. And I want everyone on the who's watching right now to please visit peoplesaction.org/peoples-bailout to email and contact your congressperson to support Congresswoman Tlaib's Automatic Boost to Communities Act. That website again is on the screen, and it's peoplesaction.org/peoples-bailout to contact your congressmember to get direct payments to everyone every month for as long as this crisis lasts. So Congresswoman Tlaib is stepping up with the relief we need right now in the middle of this economic crisis. But how do we move from relief into recovery? To tell us more a little bit about that is People's Action's own Climate Justice Campaign Director, Kenyella Ng.
Everybody, thanks, Sean, and thank you so much, Congresswoman. Rashida, we a group of us put together this People's Bailout, and so many organizations came on, and to see actual members of Congress meeting this moment at the scale that we need is just so heartening. It's just you're actually in touch with real people, and Stephanie Kelton for really laying it out and showing us that these false debates between whether we need direct payments or we need to do massive job programs or pass a Green New Deal or forgive student debt, these aren't real conversations. We can do it all, and we actually have to do it all if we want to create an economy that works for everyone and is going to last. Because if COVID exposed anything, it's the absurdity of this current system, that we just hit pause. You can hit pause, and by like week 2, everything was in complete disarray, right? And it doesn't have to be that way. We don't need to have a system that requires us to grow beyond the next valley, the next ocean, the next continent, the next planet. Like, it's obviously unsustainable. And it's an economy that's telling us right now that $33 million people now is a new number, don't have work. Even though the demand is clearly there. Like, you walk out your door, there are bridges to be built, there are roads to be repaired, there are trees to be planted, millions and millions of trees. And there are people, like, we're going to have more seniors than we ever had in just a decade or so, and we're not going to be prepared for the caregiving jobs either. So why can't the private sector meet that demand? And it's really clear that we need a new approach, and we can shape our economy any way we want. So state budgets right now are in the dumps. They're slashing salaries from state workers by 20 to 30% in some states, and we can afford to intervene. And in fact, we can't afford not to. So in addition to direct payments, we need to demand full employment. And it's why in People's Action, we're fighting for a Green New Deal jobs program that prioritizes frontline communities, people of color, low-income communities, rural and southern towns that are going to be hit first and worse, and actually create real jobs that aren't going to just dissolve as soon as the stock market takes a dip or when this next crisis hits. So our demand is to create a Works Progress Administration, Citizens Conservation Corps. If this is just gibberish to you, it's programs that we already had enacted back in like the 1930s in the first New Deal, but this time we're going to do it in a more equitable way that helps everyone, regardless of race, gender, or class. So that's 30 million new public sector jobs in green infrastructure, caregiving, weatherization, everything we need to build an economy that lasts. And if you want to be a part of that, or to demand that Congress take action now before it's too late, then please also go to peoples-bailout. Forget that dash in there. And we're going to come out more stronger than we ever were, more resilient and ready to face the future. Like, if you want direct payments, if you want real jobs that are actually going to protect our planet, if you want a people's bailout, and even if you don't need or want these things, if you're willing to work for someone that you don't know, and create a world that works for all of us, and please visit peoplesaction.org/peoples-bailout. All right, I will.
Thank you so much, Kanyella. I want to thank Professor Stephanie Kelton for reassuring us that our big, bold vision of a people's bailout is not only possible, but it's absolutely necessary. I want to thank Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib for really stepping up and giving the people what we need right now. And I want everyone to please visit peoplesaction.org/peoples-bailout to get connected right now, to contact your congressperson and get what we need. Our future is just what we do together, and we're only limited by our vision. We can do what we need to get out of this together. Thank you all.